Thank you for visiting the channel. So today I come to you to talk about three things. A, if you have an aggressive dog, I'm going to give you my story when I had one. And no, it's not just pit bulls, Rottweilers, whatever you've heard. Any dog breed can be aggressive, no matter the size. So I'm going to give you my personal story, and then what to do if you find yourself with an aggressive pet, and then three, what if you know someone that has an aggressive pet that you frequently visit, and what you need to do. So my personal story, um, about 17 years ago, we adopted a dog. He was just a few months old, maybe 5 to 7 months old. It was a Katrina rescue dog. And your typical puppy, I consider them puppies when they're less than a year old. Your typical puppy, like to play a little bit too much. So I didn't think much of it. My son at the time, my oldest son, was maybe 9. So, the dog was a little rough around the edges. We just didn't play too much with him, but we didn't think much of it. We just chalked it up to be, okay, he's just a puppy. So things pretty much went okay for the first 6 to 8 months. Then we started fostering kids. We were foster parents, and even then, everybody could come in the house. Things were okay, but we noticed as the months grew, he was becoming more territorial about people coming into the house, to the point where we would either have to put him up, or we would have to tell the people, just come straight in, just ignore him, so on and so forth. So that was one of the first many warnings, is just he was starting to be more territorial where visitors would come over. And then we decided to adopt a second dog. This dog was a lab, by the way. He was a lab. And then we decided to adopt a second dog. She was a golden retriever, Mindy. The lab's name was Cole. From the moment Mindy came home, he pretty much attacked her from day one. She wasn't allowed to get on the couch. They got into this huge fight over over an ice chip that fell. And I actually have a scar on my arm still to this day trying to break up the fight. But again, I made excuses thinking he's just getting used to the other dog being around. And then one night, the first major wake up call, one of my husband's colleagues came to the home in the middle of the night. We were doing newspapers at the time, and he was training my husband. I said, "Oh, just come right in. He's fine," just like we always told other people to do. He took a huge bite out of this guy. I felt horrible. That was the first major sign that my dog had issues. He bit someone. Luckily, the guy didn't press charges. He didn't. He just chalked it up to mean nothing. I felt horrible. At that moment, my husband wanted to get rid of him right away, but no. And you know how ladies are, even some men, we get emotional. You always have one partner that's going to be a little bit more emotional about the pets than the other. So let that slide. And then years went by. We just got used to him being the way that he was, until one day, and we were warned when we adopted him, he's not good around small animals. Yeah, I think did they say smaller dogs? Anyway, so we were always cautious. Well, one day I was walking him. We were in our new house. He got away from me on the leash when he saw a little Chihuahua breed. And unfortunately, when he bit the dog, he punctured the dog in the lung. The dog did not make it. We went to the emergency vet with our neighbors. They didn't press charges, surprisingly. They actually invited us over to a barbecue a week later. Again, felt horrible. And of course, we had to quarantine the dog. There's laws in each state what you have to do. We have a gated, we have a fence, so we had to keep him where he couldn't walk for 2 weeks. I tried to get a better collar so he couldn't get away from me as much. The dog probably weighed 9 pounds soaking wet. Just awful. And at this point, Cole probably weighed about 50, 60 pounds. So after the quarantine, I ended up getting pregnant with my youngest son, who is now 16. And from the moment I got pregnant, my husband, he was actually nervous after the dog incident, when we ended up having to put the dog down, unfortunately. So there were all kinds of warning signs that I chose to ignore. And so finally, one time when my son was born. He was about a year old in his high chair, and he had some food in the high chair, and he was going to reach it, and the dog bit his finger. When he was trying to get his own food, he had got up on the high chair, and then when my son went to go get his own food in the high chair, the dog bit him. And my husband like, that's it, he's got to go. So I called every place around where we were locally. Nobody, and I'm a very transparent person. I don't believe in lying. So I did disclose to them that he had killed another animal. And nobody at that point wanted to adopt him. They said he would probably be euthanized based on his aggression. So I felt horrible. And ironically, the day before the dog incident, he was set to go to obedience training. Honestly, I don't know if that would have even helped him. However, nobody locally would take him. I ended up having to call the place where we originally adopted him from, because they had a bunch of Katrina rescue dogs that they took, and they agreed to take him back. That was an 8-hour drive. I called once after we took him back, and I think they said he went with the owner who returned him because he bit the owner. I think I called once more after that, and I wasn't really getting a lot of information. I think they had changed his name, so they weren't sure if it was even the same dog that they were referring to. So after that point, I just made peace with the situation and decided not to call anymore, that it just wasn't doing me any good to keep calling. So that had been about a year. So he was a lab. So that goes to show it's not all pit bulls, Rottweilers, whatever you've heard. And honestly, I have a Papillon Chihuahua mix that is very much so a nipper. However, he's 10 pounds. He can't do a lot of destruction. But no, if you find yourself with an aggressive pet, don't wait until it's too late. There's so many news articles about animals killing the infant, even young children. That's something you have to personally decide. What will work. Is training possible? Is that something that will help? I honestly don't know in many of these situations, especially where children are concerned, unfortunately. And if you find yourself in a situation, unfortunately, where your child has been attacked by your family pet or has attacked someone else, I give out my condolences, especially whether the child makes it or not. I just give my condolences. That's a very sensitive topic. That's just not a good situation to find yourself in. I know how I felt when my dog injured another animal and killed the animal. I can only imagine a human being. But don't wait until it's too late. Get help. Whatever that may be for your particular situation. I don't know if it'll be training for you. Like in my situation, rather extreme, taking the dog back where I got it, if that is an option. Maybe having someone else adopt the pet. There's a lot of country dogs or dogs that live in the country that it may be more suitable for than a family with children. You're going to have to decide what works for you, but please decide before it's too late. And if you're friends with someone or family that has an aggressive pet and you're not comfortable, meet your family, have them come over to your home. Meet them somewhere else. It's not worth you putting yourself or your family, your immediate family at risk. They will understand. And maybe show them this video. It's never too late. I know sometimes training may be effective, but unfortunately, as many of us see, a lot of times in these training things, I've watched Cesar Millan and some of his videos, sometimes the dog just responds to the trainer. So unfortunately, not only does the dog need training, many times, and I hate to say it, the human does as well, because we've allowed the dog to get away with so much. The dog has become conditioned to us as owners. So it may take a little while for us to establish that dominance, so to speak. But if you have a young child in the house, it's definitely more time sensitive. You may not have the time to risk, so to speak, establishing that dominance, especially if it's going to put you or your family at risk. Again, I've not done enough research to see what it is that triggers some pets to just go after a child when the pet is not being provoked. And please don't misunderstand me into thinking that I'm not saying that a child or human ever deserves to be hurt just simply because they're provoked. There's many situations where a dog can be unprovoked and still cause harm. The only reason I say provoked is because at least then there seems to be some type of a wiring or justification for the animal to do what he did, but it's even more horrifying in situations where you don't see it coming. So again, watch out for those triggers. Don't ignore the warnings like I did. Um, if I hadn't ignored the warnings, maybe that dog would still be alive today. But again, don't wait until it's too late. You know, people say it's Rottweilers, it's all pits, or if you raise pits a certain way, they won't be aggressive. Know the risk factors before you adopt a pet, regardless of the breed. Just like in my case, I had a lab, and who would think a lab would do that? But he did. He injured another animal and killed him. Thank you for visiting the channel.